Pirates and Marines in One Piece are really two sides of the same coin. Just people out on the sea doing whatever they please, right? Stealing from others, enslaving others, setting people free, bringing justice, bringing order, and bringing chaos. Sometimes it's the Marines doing these things, and sometimes it's the pirates doing these things. It's not very clear. And so, because the lines are blurred, we now have to question sometimes what if some characters, switch their roles? And today we're doing that for Garp. What if Garp was a pirate instead of a marine? Now that intro is a bit on the fly, so I don't know how it sounded in the end, but hopefully it's good because I'm not redoing that again. But what if Garp was a pirate? What if, he wasn't this marine guy who everyone looks up to, the hero of the Marines, but he was a very hardcore pirate? And for this assumption, I just want to preface this and say that we're not going to change Garp's character too much, right? Based off of what we know, we're going to take a lot of the same things, leave a lot of his relationships as much as possible intact, and, just change him to being a pirate instead of a marine. And so first of all, I think this was explored, it was not really explored, but mentioned, right? In episode 907, this was explored when, we had an alternate universe in which Luffy became a pirate. Nami had blue hair, and the one who set him on this path was not Shanks, but it was Garp, and he gave Luffy the straw hat because Garp had it. And that is something we will also bring up later in this video about Garp and the straw hat. But first of all, like I said, we're not changing Garp's personality, right? We're keeping it the same, and, for the most part, as much as possible, we will keep his relationships intact. Which means that, first of all, stuff like Garp being, a peace main as it's described in that episode, a pirate who's, all about that good vibes, not trying to ruin anyone's life kind of thing, right? That kind of pirate, that's the kind of person I imagine Garp would be. It's the kind of person they said he was there, and it's the kind of person he is in general. Garp is not one of those, really crooked, really mean Marines. He likes to do stuff. He's a very straightforward guy. We've seen him, he doesn't like celestial dragons. He's a very nice guy. So I imagine even as a pirate, he'd be a nice guy. He'd be up there with the likes of Roger and Shanks and Whitebeard. Speaking of which, I think Garp would be up there. One of the legends from back in the day, in Roger and Whitebeard's heyday, Garp would be in that conversation as well. Maybe Garp would be the Sabo of the group, right? Well, if you want Ace to be like the Whitebeard, Luffy to be the Roger, Garp would be the Sabo of that group. But he would be there, right? So even stuff like fighting at God Valley, that could have easily happened. It's just Garp and his pirate group instead of Garp and the Marines were there. So that could easily just stay the same. And I think on top of that, Garp would be a pirate who's not really about finding the One Piece, just like Whitebeard was. Whitebeard wasn't a pirate trying to find the One Piece. Even after Roger died, that wasn't what he was about. I think Whitebeard was just about family and enjoying his life on the seas. I think Garp would have, I guess, similar, goals as he has now. I imagine that Garp would be someone who's really about that, trying to, almost like a marine, right? He's almost like a pirate, a marine pirate, if you will, right? He's trying to help people. If he comes across people being enslaved, he will help them. Sometimes he goes out of his way to do so. And I imagine that he would be feared among, pirates, marines, Yonko alike, right? Garp would be that. I guess Garp would be given the title of Yonko, I imagine, very easily. And he would be a Yonko who makes other Yonkos stare in their territory. If you have characters like Big Mom going to islands and doing a bit too much there, Garp would be like, stay in Totland, stay in your lane, right? That kind of thing. I imagine Garp can be doing that kind of thing. Like, he just does whatever he wants and he keeps everyone in line. Somewhat less now that he's getting old and more retiring, but more like in his heyday, that was his thing. Now, I'm sure we all want to know what I think about his bounty, and I think surprisingly the number I came up with was 4,590,000,000. How did I come up with this number? Why is it not as high as Roger and Whitebeard? The reason is I was actually going to go with 4,910,000,000, which is just, I guess, 150 million berries lower than Whitebeard's one, so kind of still up there, because what he doesn't have, what Whitebeard has, which is essentially the power to destroy the world. So a bit lower, but still in that kind of high group where he's almost chilling with Whitebeard essentially. But I decided on 4.59 because really he wouldn't have that kind of devil fruit, but he'd also be a very chill guy. From what I've described, he's kind of also helping the Marines in a sense, right? He's kind of like the unofficial Marine in the New World. Speaking of which, a tangent, like, I think that because of that, he would have been probably requested to join the Warlords, and I imagine that at some point he may have been a Warlord in this universe, alongside maybe, Mihawk joined later on, but maybe the first Warlord ever would have been Garp, and he'd still be, Garp the Fist, or Genkotsu no Garp, right? I hope I said that right. Genkotsu no Garp. And I think that is what he'd be in this universe still. And he'd be an unofficial Marine, so it's kind of like, why should we put that high a bounty on his head when he's helping us essentially do our job for, keeping the pirates at bay in the New World? Instead of Yonko keeping Yonko at bay, you have this one kind of Yonko character keeping the rest of the Yonko in check. You don't have to worry as long as he's there. Although I do think that he probably would have left the Marines on his own, because once again, Garp likes to be free and he doesn't like to be told what to do, which is the reason why he's still a Vice Admiral. So I think, probably for a time he would have kept that going, and then maybe he would have thrown it away, thrown the title away. When? That's up to you. Whatever event you think should happen to do that, that's up to you. But that's really a lot of why I think his bounty would not be just as high as Whitebeard and Roger, because really he's not that much of a threat. Kind of like the way Kaido is kind of like a sleeping dragon in a sense, right? At any moment, Kaido could wake up and go on a rampage. So he's slightly lower than Kaido, in between Kaido and Big Mom. Why did I think of 0.59 instead of just 0.5 flat? I was really trying to be as smart as, Oda and all these guys, when he thinks of the numbers of people's bounties and the wordplay. But of course, I don't know Japanese. I can't do wordplay that well. My wordplay is so basic that it's honestly terrible. And the reason why is, it's Genkotsu no Garp. So I was like, what sounds like ko and tsu? And then I said, go for 5 and Q for 9. So instead of go tsu, I went with, instead of ko tsu, I went with go Q. So 5, 9. So yeah, I mean, if you can think of like a better wordplay for any bounty that you may want for him, feel free, let me know. But like I was saying, Garp would have a bounty around that much, which for me makes sense. But yeah, but let's talk about his crew, right? Interesting characters, a lot of strong characters who would probably be in his crew. And I think number one, while I don't know a lot of the characters, I think Aokiji, high chance that he'd be in there. Especially because of everything we know about him, right? Now, Aokiji, we met him as a Marine, but, even when he met Luffy for the first time after Long Ring Longland, just before Water 7, he mentioned that the only reason I'm keeping you alive is because of your grandfather, right? Quickly establishing the relationship. Later on, we see in a flashback when, I think it was Shiki in Strong World, there's that kind of moment where, Garp's heading out and then Aokiji's like, let me tag along, right? He wanted to, follow Garp every time Garp was going out. So maybe there's a universe in which, Aokiji is on Garp's ship. He's his first mate. Aokiji's the first mate of Genkotsu, the Kaizoku, Genkotsu Kaizoku, the Fist Pirates. I don't know how good that sounds. Let's just assume that sounds good. But Aokiji would be there, really strong character, and even now, right, he mentioned to Smoker after Punk Hazard that there's many ways of helping the world, and the Marines are not the only, the Marines are not the only way to go if you want to do good in this world. And so, because Aokiji sees the world in such a way, I think it's highly possible, right? Because we don't even know, Aokiji's story of how he even joined the Marines. It may have been Garp. Garp may have been the one who's like, join the Marines, and then Aokiji's like, okay. So maybe in this world, Garp is like, join my pirate crew. And then Aokiji's like, okay. Alright, so Aokiji is joined, he's the first mate. And they have a whole bunch of other pirates. I'm not sure who those would be. You can imagine the Yonko crew for yourself. But yeah, I think that would just be really interesting in just thinking about how that would happen and, all the relationships that would form. But moving on a bit to the Straw Hat that I mentioned earlier, I think because of the relationship of Garp and Roger, I think they would have been possibly even a bit closer, right? Sparring back in the day, fighting a bit more. So because of that, I think that, they'd still have this close relationship, and potentially because Garp is a pirate, maybe Roger wouldn't have said, entrust him with Ace, but also the Straw Hat as well. maybe if Garp was a Marine, that part of the story would have changed. Garp would have been like, Roger would have been like, hey, take the straw as well, and not giving it to him like as in this is yours now, but more like maybe in the sense of like, I want my son to be the one who finds the One Piece. Maybe it's gonna be him, right? He had that moment when they were thinking about, what are we gonna do now after we found Laugh Tale, right? And he's like, maybe my son will be the one. And so maybe he's like, you know what? If my son wants to become a pirate and pursue Pirate King stuff, then give him the Straw Hat. I think you should give him the Straw Hat, right? And then he gives him the Straw Hat, and then he's like, well, yeah, but if he doesn't want to, or he doesn't do something else, then, give the Straw Hat to whoever you think the Straw Hat should go to, right? And he's like, maybe give it to your own son. And then Garp said, dragon? I don't think so. And then that's how he ended up giving it to Luffy, right? He gave Luffy the Straw Hat instead. So we still have this train of events. It's just in this world, Luffy still gets the Straw Hat, but from Garp instead of Shanks. Shanks is out doing his own thing. He's a different character in this universe. But it's important to note because, like I said, Garp gives it to Luffy. But it makes it interesting as to the relationship of how Luffy would have set sail to become a pirate on his own, both him and Ace. Would he still be with the Dun? I think that's a valid option. He may have still gone to the mountains, may have lived their life there, but maybe after that, maybe after everything with Sabo, maybe when they were slightly older, there's a chance that Garp would have invited them onto his ship to be apprentice pirates. Right, and that I think is also very interesting, right? And I don't think that, Luffy and Ace would have done that and be like, yeah, we'll follow you, Garp, and make you king of the pirates kind of thing. Like the way Ace was with Whitebeard or anything like that. I think that, they probably would have been there and been like, okay, we'll keep getting stronger. And then when when we're ready, we're going to set out on our own crew. So a similar thing in which they both set out when they were 17 years old. It's just instead of spending all their time in Fuchsia Village, they would have spent a couple of years, I'd say, maybe Luffy being around 12 and Ace being 15. And then they jumped on the ship. And then Ace spent 2 years and then went out on his own. And Luffy spent 5 years and then went out on his own. Right, and in that time, they would have seen the world. Or maybe even, Garp was like, you need to be at least 15 years old, right? So Ace went when he was 15, left Luffy behind for 3 years, and then Luffy joined. And by the time Luffy joined, Ace was already off the ship, being a pirate on his own. And then Luffy joined, and then he started his own journey. And that's how it was, right? Or maybe Garp took them on some adventures. Either way, there's a chance for Luffy to actually grow on a pirate ship and see what life is like. With Garp wanting him to become a pirate. And I think that's so interesting because a lot of these things that Luffy just didn't know about the world, he would now kind of know. I think Luffy's still too dumb almost in the sense that he may not pay attention, right? Because think about it now. If you sat down and asked Luffy a lot of details about the One Piece story, I don't think Luffy can tell you that many details. He can tell you like fun stuff that happened. He can tell you stuff that really hurt him. And, some general things he's experienced along the way, but Luffy still can't tell you details, and he can't remember even people's names, right? He remembers faces, but not names. So I think there's a lot that Luffy would still not spoil if he went on Garp's ship for a year, especially if during those 2 years or something, Garp just chilled in like maybe a certain area in the Grand Line, right? Not where Luffy took his main journey, right? Maybe some of the blues around, right? Maybe that would have been the thing. So, instead of just having Luffy jump straight into the Grand Line, because now we haven't seen much of the other blues. So maybe that was it. Maybe Garp spent time with them in the other blues, exploring the different islands. And then Luffy set sail and went straight for the Grand Line after having experience in the different blues. And maybe the Calm Belt as well. I don't know. But that would have made it very interesting as a journey for Luffy starting off. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is the Marineford War. Because if we're assuming that most things are still the same, a lot of characters are the same in the way they are, except with this slight change, then there's a high possibility that once again, Ace wanted to go out on his own. He did everything. He had a crew. He grew stronger and he, became notable. And then at some point, he met Whitebeard and joined Whitebeard's crew. Then everything with Blackbeard happened the same way it did. And finally, we have reached the point in which Ace gets captured and he's going to be executed. But in this world, instead of Whitebeard showing up, what would Garp do? What role would Garp play? And, how would it turn out? Would Ace be alive? Would Garp would Garp have saved him? You know, would Whitebeard show up? Would Whitebeard be like, Garp should save him or something like that, right? I don't know. Like, it's very interesting, but I think the most likely scenario is that both Whitebeard and Garp would show up, which would present a problem to the Navy. But on the other hand, you know, depending on your interpretation of the results, things could be slightly different. For example, Sengoku didn't do much in the war, right? So maybe this would be a chance for Sengoku to like fight, like maybe one-on-one versus Garp, while, you know, everything else kind of plays the way it did. But if we're saying that Aokiji is Garp's first mate, then that presents another issue, because another person who played a pivotal role in that part of the story is now against them. So I think, you know, possibly we may as well see, like, in that moment, a lot of these characters who we saw in the war maybe take it more seriously. People like Mihawk, people like Doflamingo, like the warlords might have taken it a bit more seriously, because it's not one but two legends have arrived in this war, right? So we may have seen Doflamingo use everything he has, you know, trying to fight and enjoy everything while it was going on. Someone like Mihawk might have been like, yeah, I finally got the chance to take Whitebeard on, because, you know, Garp can still, I don't really care about the results. Garp can still save Ace, but now I can fight, like, you know, take the gloves off. I don't know if that's the expression. We probably would have seen a bit more. Obviously, there'd be an admiral who would replace Aokiji. I think in this case, maybe it might not be a case of like the Marines would, you know, call someone up who doesn't exist. Maybe Kong would show up. But maybe it would be the case that because it's kind of like, you know, Garp's going to show up, maybe Whitebeard might have not called all his other guys, like, to show up. Maybe it just might have been the core Whitebeard crew and the core Garp pirate group. I don't want to say the Fist Pirates, that sounds a bit weird. So Garp pirate group, and they might, like, the core groups of those two, and, you know, not like allied captains kind of thing. Like those ones might have fought at the Marineford War. I think the results of that one would have been more or less the same. I think in the end, we could still have Ace die. That's important for Luffy, because Luffy would show up and Garp would be like, why is he here? Right? Because then we'll have the same moment with Luffy and Whitebeard, but then you would have like Garp and Luffy fighting and like kicking each other and like whatever. And then Garp like gives Luffy Fist of Love, and then boom, after like Ace dies, Fist of Love, boom, and then Jinbei takes him away. And, you know, Ace dies, and then Whitebeard dies. And I think once that's gone, right, and then maybe Garp would be the one to stop it. Because Shanks is not that involved. I think Shanks would be up to other stuff in this world. I don't know about Shanks really. This is a video about Garp. I think Garp would be the one to stop the war in this case, because, you know, at this point, Blackbeard's done his thing. Whitebeard's dead. Ace is dead. Why are we still here? I forgot to mention this in the video, but I could easily see everything happening at Marineford to be maybe why Garp would stop being a warlord. I think he would have probably done it before, but at that point, he would definitely stop. Right, so potentially it's Garp who stops the war, and as we've seen, like the same thing would happen. Garp would become more of a retired figure, not as active as he once was before, but this time he just wouldn't be as active of a pirate, right? Kind of leaving that role, almost seeing it being left to Luffy, because now Luffy be taking the Yonko, you know, stopping them from doing everything that they want to do. So almost like Luffy's now becoming the new Garp, and at the same time Luffy also trying to become the new Roger. It's that great dynamic. I think that would be a very interesting thing. But yeah, guys, this is just my thoughts. Like Garp as a Marine, like what would you guys like to see? Like if that were a thing, and like Oda's like, yeah, we're doing a whole two-piece Garp as a Marine, and the whole story is different. If that version of the story went ahead, just anything that you would like to see, right? Fights, characters, crews, dynamics, goals, name it all, and we'll have the discussion. As always, guys, please like this video if you like the video, and subscribe, all that good stuff down below. For those of you who are worried about spoilers, I know this is the end, but in all my videos, I do put something in the description, so that will be there for this video, and it's there for all my other videos, so go watch those, knowing this, and that you're safe. You're safe. You're basically safe. But anyway, guys, this is King KZ, and I'll see you in the next one. Made that up on the fly, but that's the point of the video. What if Garp was a Marine? What the hell?